Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of our special series of podcasts to celebrate 10 years of IP Inclusive. I'm joined again by Jodie Bates, who is an IT trainer at the patent and trademark attorney firm Boult Wade Tennant, who's my co-host. Hi, Jodie.
Hi, Max.
Hiya, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
And joining us today, where we're going to be talking about the Careers and Ideas Network, we have Chris Burnett, who's a patent attorney and partner at Knights. He's heavily involved in careers and ideas. Hi, Chris.
Hi there, you right?
Yeah, fine, thank you. And Tom Hales, who is a patent attorney at DMS Firmenich in Geneva, who's also been heavily involved in careers and ideas and the IP Inclusive Network. Hi, Tom.
Hi there. It's actually DSM Firmenich. So not
DSM
Lady
Firmenich,
Di.
apologies. What did I say?
DMS.
DMS. Okay, DSM. Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. Good stuff. Okay, well, I guess to those who don't know, maybe if one of you could just briefly sort of explain what careers and ideas is all about and the sort of the idea behind the committee. But Tom, I'm talking to you now. Why don't you sort of start us off?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was main. I think it was set up recognizing that there was a sort of a gap in the efforts of for increasing diversity and inclusivity. You sort of have to start with the people coming in the door, and there would
Mm.
be recruits into the profession. And if you have not got a diverse pool of people to recruit from, then it makes your job infinitely harder to maintain diversity as people progress through their careers. Does that sound about right, Chris?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, I guess it's about the pipeline. So if you, because I think we found that a lot of people only found out about their own job by luck.
Mm.
Maybe they bumped into someone who's a patent attorney, something like that. And
Yeah.
you're not going to get a very diverse crowd that way. So we thought if we go to if you're going to sort of widen participation, one of the ways to do that is through outreach and through making resources available so people can actually find out about the job because you can only recruit people who actually apply for the job.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I found out about IP exactly in a similar way through luck, through a conversation with someone. I was working on a local paper at the time, and someone told me that they work for a magazine that deals with intellectual property. I thought, okay, that sounds quite interesting. And so, yeah, got into it through a conversation like that. Jodie, what about you? How did you come into the world of IP?
World of IP for me, obviously being an IT trainer, a lot of my skills from a corporate background were transferable here. I actually done a legal secretary course many years ago in the evening, and it covers a wide range of legal areas, employment law, human rights. And there was actually a very, very small sector that was dedicated to IP. And to be honest, I can barely remember it. But most people I've spoken to have always stumbled across IP, either someone they know their dad was a patent
Mm,
attorney. And I don't know if anyone actually grows up thinking, when I grow up, I want to be a patent attorney or a trademark attorney. Not there's anything wrong with it
mm,
at all. It's people just don't know about it.
mm,
I think it's after they do their university degrees and stuff like that, either in engineering or biotech,
mm.
that they find out that the job they wanted to do maybe not being what they envisioned, and then they find out about IP, and that's how they get into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. The attorney role is, I don't know if you know Tom or Chris, you can speak to it, but that, as Jodie was saying, it's a role that not many people perhaps know is available to them if they're thinking of a career in law potentially. You might just think, oh, solicitor or a barrister or whatever. What's your
Yeah,
take on?
I
Yeah.
mean, I remember when I was graduating and I was very quickly realizing that I wasn't very good in the lab and probably
Mm,
didn't want to work in a lab for
mm,
my career. I went to the career service and they'd never even heard of it. It wasn't even mentioned to me as an option. But I was provisionally interested in law because I'd done like
mm,
a law module in my first year and it went quite well. So I was like, maybe I could be a lawyer. And I was told, solicitor,
mm,
barrister. I was told about the qualification route to get there, and I was like, oh God, that sounds intense.
mm,
And yeah, I think it's a similar story for most patent attorneys. I basically stumbled across a alumni at a careers outside chemistry event who was a patent attorney, and I was immediately like, aha, great. I can still, use the science in my degree without being in the lab. Talk about science rather than being in the lab doing it. So it
mm,
ticked all those boxes, and yeah, that's how I found out. I think it's quite a similar story for a lot of people in the profession.
mm,
Yeah, so almost exactly the same story for me. I was similarly incompetent in the lab and absolutely hated it, but I really enjoyed some of the sort of the analytical side of the science, and I thought, okay, this is interesting. Where can I use my degree, but without having to work in a lab? I don't know what your background is, Tom, but I was biochemistry as well, so there was a lot of pipetting bacteria, and I just thought I don't fancy this for a career, but I find it really interesting, and just well, my family are all solicitors. Well, my dad
Mm.
is, my uncle is, and they'd heard of patent attorneys, so I managed to get in that way, which is, it's great if you've got the contacts. So I guess what Careers and Ideas is about is giving other people that kind of opportunity as well. Got to make people find out about what careers there are in IP, and then also how they can actually get one. Give them the resources they need, and give them the contacts.
Yeah, I mean, how do you go about doing that? What's the sort of message you put out there when you look to the sort of pool of the next generation coming through? How do you kind of emphasize the wide options that are around in IP?
Well, I think, to be honest, I hadn't even thought about all of the different roles. I
Mm.
just thought patent attorney, and I was kind of quite focused on that.
Mm.
Now I work in a sort of wider full service law firm. I know that there's solicitors and there's people who deal in litigation, franchising, and they all come across IP. Obviously, there's specialist barristers, judges, and I think it was just from the conversations we had about careers and ideas when I suddenly realised that you could be a specialist IP journalist, for example, or
Mm.
I mean, we've got people in business services who do marketing, and they need to understand what IP is and how it relates to the clients. And same in accounts. We deal with a lot of international stuff that perhaps other areas of law don't. So there's a lot to kind of get your head around there. So that makes you kind of think, well, how do we actually encourage everybody about IP? And I think that was quite a bit of an eye opener for me as well. You can go to a school and university or wherever and talk to students and think, okay, there might be something for everyone here.
Do you think there's more that needs to be done in terms of the wider conversation about actually what IP is? Because when we speak to people, for example, when we speak to businesses, either in-house or we speak to law firms who are kind of acting for businesses, they sometimes say to us, like, the C-suite, as they call it, they don't really actually understand IP. So if people aren't really understanding what IP is all about, then obviously they're not going to know about the potential options that are available to them as a career.
This is true, but I think people know far more about it than they think. I mean,
Mm.
Tom will tell you something similar, but I went to my daughter's school. She's at primary school, and
Mm.
everyone had heard of like famous brand names. They
Yeah.
watched the TV show Shark Tank because they're really popular on sort of YouTube Shorts and TikTok, and
Yeah.
so everyone knows kind of what protecting ideas are, and they're surprisingly sort of clued in on it actually. So as long as you sort of can throw a few buzzwords around like trademarks,
Mm.
copyright, protecting ideas, people do actually kind of know what it's about, even if they don't you don't know the specifics of it.
Sure. Yeah. Tom, what's your sort of take on that, of the wider understanding of IP amongst, society, I suppose, and how that will tune into a
Yeah, I
potential
think
career? Mm.
I think like Chris says, like there is a lot of IP weaved into our society if you have someone there just to point out that it's
Mm.
happening. Brand
Mm.
names is obviously the obvious one, but I think also even with patents and inventions, there's so many good stories out there that you can use in a session at a school to ground it in reality and to explain the reasons behind the patent system and how society basically wouldn't function if we didn't have it. So obviously everyone's heard of patents, I think, but once you explain sort of how they
Mm.
work and why we need them, I think it can pique students' interests and make it something that's a bit more sort of tangible that
Yeah.
they can then think about and know about when they're thinking about what they want to do later in life.
Jodie, what's your take on? I know you've got school age children. Are they kind of tuned in to the notion of IP, and do they think about that sort of stuff, or?
No, Bella's 5.
Oh, okay, right, maybe
No,
not
but
so
on
much
when
then.
I'm on the school
Mm.
run, people say to me, "Oh, like I don't see you on a Monday and Tuesday. What do you do?" And I'm like, "I
Mm.
work in London. I work for a law firm." That's how
Mm.
I start it off. And they're like, "Oh, what kind of stuff do you do?" And I was like, "Intellectual property." And they're like,
Mm.
"What's that?" So
Mm.
then you talk about trademarks, and I
Yeah.
say, "Oh, well, like Harry Potter's trademarked and like Stranger Things and all the things that are coming out at the
Mm.
moment." And they're like, "Oh yeah." And I talk about trademarks more because I think people understand that a lot easier than patterns. I know that
Mm.
I personally do. But then I talk about little things and they're like, "Oh, I never thought of that." And like the don't quote me on this, but I've been told in the past that the Cadbury's purple on the chocolate, sometimes that shade of purple is potentially trademarked for other edible things. And I'm like, people don't think about stuff like this. And it's all those little intricate bits. So I was like, yeah, that's how I work for an IP firm. And they're like, wow, that sounds really smart.
Yeah, I have a similar thing with my son when he's obsessed with cars, so he sort of knows all the different brands, and then I try and tell him about, why they're called different names and why they have different logos and stuff, and he gets bored quite quickly at that point. But he's very he's kind of aware of the different brands that there are around, and I've always thought that IP is one of those areas of law that's well suited to a kind of diverse network of people coming through. It does strike me as one of those areas that can have potentially a massive pool of talent within it. Yeah, Chris, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you need quite a well, it depends how you define diversity, but you certainly need people who've got a diverse range of technical backgrounds. I know that's within a very sort of narrow pool, and you do need a particular type of mind, I think, for patents, and it's probably different for trademarks. But then you've got, it doesn't really matter what your background is. I think as long as you've got the ability to be technically competent, if you can express sort of the technical and the legal side of it to a different audience, whether that's an examiner or whether it's a client, or whether it's to the other side, then it doesn't really matter whether sort of what your gender is, what your age is, what your sort of social background is. I mean, we just need people who are sort of supposed to find the technology are interesting, they enjoy the law, and they're able to communicate that. So I think there's no reason why it should sort of target a particular subset of the community. I mean, yes, you need a STEM background for patents, but there's absolutely no reason why other areas of IP you do need that. I mean, for trademarks, you could probably have any kind of background, really. You've got to have an interest in the law and the brands, and commercialization as well. So, you need sort of business mind as well. But yeah, I mean,
branding, advertising background, those sorts of things for
exactly.
trademarks potentially.
You
Yeah,
have an interest in it, really, I think, and be able to sort of express that.
With the STEM background, I used to work, as I've said in the past, in a manufacturing corporate company, and we used to go into colleges to find engineers. And I've even now, being a woman that works in IT, it's really hard to get women, people that identify as women, into STEM into STEM courses, and then onto being potentially patent attorneys. Even now, we've got a young girl who works with us on a work experience basis, and we were having a conversation the other day, and we said, "Oh, how many females are there in your class at college?" And she was like, "About 8 or 9." And we were like, "Oh, that's quite a few out of a class of 70." So you got that side of it as well when you think about trying to get more diversity. And I think of the ratio of male and female.
Depends on the subject, I think, because I know in biology there was probably more females than males when I was at university. I mean, this is 30 years ago, so I don't imagine it's changed too much since then. But if you talk about physics or engineering, it's far more male heavy. And I think I suppose one thing that we could do, I suppose, if people are interested in a career in IP, then they might choose their degree based on the career they want at the end of it. So it might be able to sort of drive a bit of more people to take up a particular degree in a particular subject if they sort of see that there's a career at the end of it. But I do know universities do a lot of widening participation work. So, and there's the Institute of Physics, there's the Royal Society of Engineering. I know they try and do as much as they can. So we do try to work with them as well to provide them with resources to, that might help them to sort of diversify the people taking up their degrees.
Problem of being at every sort of stage of the pipeline, and that's why the work of careers and ideas is actually quite broad, because they're all sort of equally as important as each other. You've got the people at the very beginning. Do they choose a STEM subject? Is it diverse at the very initial stage? And then you have to maintain that diversity throughout and keep reminding people that IP exists and make it appeal to a diverse audience at the same time. And I think Careers and Ideas has done quite a lot of good work in this area as well. So like with the Careers and Ideas website, there's profiles of various people in the profession, because there already are, it's a very diverse profession already, not just because of the work that IP Inclusive do, but I think part of it is also communicating that to the people that are joining the profession to be like, look, we're already quite diverse, come and join us.
What's the most surprising profession on there, on those profiles, or a profession that people might not expect to see on an IP careers website?
I'm going to defer to Chris for this one because I haven't got any points.
It's nice to see a judge on there, I think.
Yeah.
They're not the most traditionally, you might not consider them to be the most diverse, but I suppose, well, it's something to work towards, I suppose. But yeah, but it's nice to even sort of have that kind of aspiration out there. One day you could be a judge. It's never been my aspiration, but I'm sure for a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds quite cool.
I bet I bet. And does the STEM thing, in terms of the entry to the profession, is it something that I don't know if you how closely you work with trainees, but is it something that you notice coming through that those people who with the STEM background is still sort of, I mean, I think you mentioned a few sectors where there's more women than men, but overall, would you say it's still quite male dominated, the people coming through on the STEM background?
I can't think. I mean, the only times I've recruited were in sort of the chemistry department, and that was from what I remember a fairly even mix. I don't think we were quite at the point where they were blinding CVs for that kind of information, but I think that was fairly mixed. But I do know that if you're trying to recruit into a computer scientist or something like that, it's a lot harder. But then I suppose it's a law in general. I think there's more females into law than men generally. So I guess it is just a sort of a pipeline thing for the particular STEM subject. But I've not noted. I mean, I think trademarks are predominantly female.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots of reasons for that. But that's something I've noticed.
Do you think there needs to be any changes, or would you advocate for any changes to the entrance to the profession? Thinking in terms of improving, diversity as a whole, what would you like to see different?
I mean, there's talks of apprenticeships, I believe,
Yes,
and I think that's a
there
great
is.
step in the right direction.
Yeah. What would be the benefits of an apprenticeship route compared to someone coming in from the traditional, I suppose, university route or university and law conversion route? How would an apprenticeship help improve the overall makeup of the profession, do you think?
Well, going to university is very expensive,
Hmm.
for one.
Yeah, the obvious
So
answer,
that
isn't it?
already,
Yeah.
cuts out quite a chunk of society, I think, in that sense. And a lot of the skills of a patent attorney, I think you can still have without having to go through a 4-year science course at university, especially if, you work in industry for many years, or, you do sort of science on the side whilst working as a patent attorney. Looked into it much.
I've got an apprenticeship background. I had an
Okay.
IP
Yeah.
inclusive meeting last week, and this came up.
Mm.
They are doing more apprenticeships for patent and trademarks, and also looking at getting them done for support staff as well. And I think apprenticeships are a great idea. Like you said, university is so expensive, and at the moment we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Some people, you've got the next generation that are going to come through and are probably not going to take the opportunity to go to university because people just can't afford it these days. And we are going to end up missing out on a massive chunk of people that could be our next generation of patent attorneys or trademark attorneys. And I think rolling out apprenticeships now is the perfect time. It's more affordable. You can learn on the job as you go along, which, depending on your learning style, might be more effective. And I think it's just, I got through. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to university. I got through on apprenticeships after I left school because I had to go to work. I had to earn money.
Yeah.
So I think apprenticeships are a really good way forward. And if we can integrate them into the IP side of things, it would be amazing. A massive game changer.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that would be a great thing. I think I was thinking of my own children as well, and imagining them going to university and just thinking, could be God knows how much it would cost by the time they're ready to go. But yeah, I think by that point it'll be almost the norm to have all these completely different routes. It won't necessarily be the thing that you go to college and then university and then do this. There'll be hopefully all kinds of different entrants to the profession or pathways to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think one of the things Tom said was very interesting about, especially if people are changing career, if they've been working in industry. I've got a colleague who's qualified as a patent attorney who didn't have a STEM degree, but he's been working in IP for, I think they had to prove he'd been working for 10 years, and that was enough to develop the STEM background that was required to sit the exams. And And I think, if somebody's left school and they've been working as an engineer, I mean, they probably know stuff inside out. It's the ability to learn. I mean, it's all very well saying you need the technical background that you learn from university, but I went 30 years ago, or not quite that long, 25 years ago, and everything I learned there is probably wrong now. And everything they tell, the idea of the pattern is everything you see is meant to be brand new and no one's ever thought of it before. So it's more about having yes, you need the fundamentals, but it's about having the ability to actually sort of take on new technology and understand it. And I don't think you'd have to have a degree in order to prove that. You
No.
just have to have the right level of ability. Yeah, degree is one way of showing that you've achieved that, but there's no reason why you can't do that as an apprentice, or if you've got several years of industry experience. That's just as good at demonstrating, I think, your ability to sort of take on and understand new ideas and new technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think real world experience is always going to be as good as, if not better than, proving that you've studied something for a few years and taken
Hmm.
exams, etc., isn't it? It's yeah. So what's sort of next for careers and ideas then? What's coming up? What's in the pipeline? I mean, we're talking about a 10-year anniversary for IP Inclusive. What's the sort of vision for the future, I suppose? Where would you like to go from here? Yeah, Tom, why don't we start with you and then Chris?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I guess the next thing that's happening really is the Summer of IP. I believe it happens every 2 years now. So last year was a fallow year. And I've been involved since it started, and it's basically a program of events aimed at would-be recruits into the profession, covering things from, how to apply, what a day in the life of a patent attorney or a trademark attorney is like. There's also some outreach events, which I've done, which is just basically getting people into breakout rooms over Zoom and get them chatting to and hearing from various people across professions in IP, just so they can get a taste of what it's like and they can network with them at the end. There's loads of resources as well. There's a mentoring hub if people want to find a mentor to help them get into the profession. Chris, I probably missed something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing. Summer of IP's been sort of the focus of careers and ideas for the last few years now, and it's a sort of one-stop shop for telling people all about the different IP careers, all the different routes into those careers, and firms also give up their time to have open days. They have some opportunities for some networking, or people can come along and do some work experience, because sometimes the hard part is, despite talking about sort of the pipeline, sometimes it's still a very competitive job, and to be able to get your foot in is sometimes very, very difficult, particularly if you haven't had the luck of having sort of family who are lawyers like I have.
Yeah.
You sometimes need the break, and if you can show that you've got the show some initiative and sign up to something like Summer of IP and go to these events, I think that will put you in a sort of really good position. So that's really good. The mentoring hub's fantastic. I know lots of people have got jobs through that, and yeah, there's resources as well on the website. So if you want to find information or you want to read case studies, there's plenty of things there on the Careers and Ideas website. And I also know that I think it's probably in the 10 years since IP Inclusive at large started, a lot of firms have sort of taken it on and are running with it. So they do their own outreach. They've got their own links to universities now, and they sort of take a much broader approach when it comes to recruitment. They won't just say, "Get me someone from the Russell Group," and that's all you need to do. There's a lot more sort of an open mind about this, and people are taking it very seriously. So actually, a lot of people have worked very hard at this, and it's good to see that it's actually sort of been the extent to which it's taken off.
In terms of the careers that are, I suppose, put on show on Summer and IP, is it just legal focused, or are there other careers in IP there? I'm thinking of, it could be a designer, I suppose. That's technically related to IP. Jodie's IT trainer at a patent and trademark attorney firm. I'm a journalist. So are there other options beyond legal there to people who may be looking at IP, but not necessarily from a legal point of view?
I think for the main, there's sort of introductory talks where they talk about a lot of different careers. In terms of the actual events and things, I think they're probably a bit more patent trademark focused. There might be maybe even like IP solicitor, but yeah, I'd love to see a bit more in terms of, if you want to get into accounts or marketing or journalism, IT, where because they're just as hard to recruit into as any other kind of job. I mean, I know trying to find people who are able to sort of handle the account side of things or understand the business when it comes to sort of marketing or the business development side of it, and
Mm.
certainly from all the IT systems. I mean, having encouraging people to work in IP is quite a good, very positive thing. So it would be nice actually, I think, to see that broadened out a bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Tom,
Um,
anything to add on that? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, something we did the last time we did Summer of IP, and I believe we're doing it again this time, is like an introductory event, which
Mm.
basically is at the start of the program. And I think it is also aimed to have, careers advisors from universities there. And I think part of the goal of that event is to be like, look, it's not just for patent attorneys and trademark attorneys, it's for
Mm.
almost everybody. There's something there for everybody in IP, like you say, from paralegals, support staff, uh, business development and marketing
Mm.
people. There's roles in IP for everyone, and I think part of the great thing about Summer IP is that it spreads the word and it educates the career services. Think back to me when I graduated, my career service had no idea about being a patent attorney, but
Mm.
maybe today they do because of the great work of IP Inclusive and Careers and Ideas. So I think that's one of the great features of the program.
Definitely. Yeah. And where do you? This might be a hard question to answer, but kind of what kind of how do we look now compared to sort of 10 years ago or when Careers and Ideas itself actually started? I'm assuming it's a more positive outlook in terms of the diverse makeup of the IP profession and the network, but yeah, where are we at now compared to where we were?
My gut feeling, and maybe
Yeah,
it's
gut
sneaky
feeling is
optimistic,
yeah.
is that it
Mm.
has improved. I think
Mm.
there's so much going on, especially with IP Inclusive, and I think it's definitely having an impact. I know some people that have gone to some of the events I've organized have then ended up, I've got a colleague at Kilburn and Strode who first
Mm.
found out about the profession from an event that I organized. So
Oh, okay,
I was like,
nice.
oh,
Yeah.
nice. So, it is
Mm.
working. There are stories out there that show it's having an impact. And I think IP Inclusive more generally puts on so many events that I think help educate firms and challenge firms to be better, to
Mm.
improve their retention rate for people from diverse backgrounds, and to make the workplace more inclusive more generally as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just say there was a guy who I talked to at a secondary school, and he came along and did some work experience with us for a week, and he's now gone through university and he's come out the other end as well. So, over he's a trainee patent attorney. So after, it's nice to know after 10 years, people are sort of, it's actually worked, and
Mm.
it's nice to be able to sort of help people like that. But just in terms of the data, I know that last year, I think there was IP Inclusive do a survey. I don't know if it's IP Inclusive or the SEPA do a diversity survey, and I
Mm.
was talking to some colleagues. In fact, some other patent attorneys as part of IP Inclusive, and was saying, it's still a bit male, pale, and stale, or whatever the
Mm.
phrase was. But when we actually looked at the data for the people who are in their sort of first 10 years of their career, it's a lot more diverse than, for example, if you look at the people in their sort of the sort of senior roles. And I don't know if that's the retention, and we've always had a very diverse intake, but I think there's more to it than that. I think that it's going to take a long time to work its way through the system, but I think
Mm.
I think for the last few years there's been a lot more thought about, and I think it's more people going to university.
Mm.
Certainly back in the noughties, that was mainly meant that I think more women went to university than ever before. And I think that's now working its way through the system. And I'm hopeful that there's a similar kind of tale for people with sort of different ethnic backgrounds as
Mm.
sort of more sort of multicultural society. And I hope that we can see that. I haven't seen all, like, say, it would be nice to have a full breakdown of all the diversity data and actually see how things are changing through time. But I think
Mm.
if you sort of drilled into it, it would actually appear that things are, in certain respects, actually improving.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like obviously the data is positive, or when you spoke about those the bits that you know about, but also to what Tom was saying, I think it's also a lot of it is just the sort of the feel of the organization that you work in and the feel of the profession at whole. If your gut instinct is that it's getting better, it probably is, because things are it's very notable when things aren't diverse or when there's a lot of work to do. And I feel like data can be skewed sometimes. I don't know. There's all sorts of ways to read into it, but yeah, that's good. It's positive. Good to be positive for the future. Jodie, what about within? I don't know if you can speak to your own personal workplace, but what's your sort of what's your sense of the diversity within the workplace?
Yeah, we do have a very diverse group of people. Obviously, I induct all new starters to the firm,
Mm.
whether they are professionals or whether they're fee earners or trainees. The last group I inducted was a group of four, and three were female, and one was male.
Mm.
So it is. I've been here 7 years now, and I've noticed more female trainees compared to when I first started. Um, Always a very diverse group of people. I think with the careers and ideas and everything that everyone does, like you said, it's going to take time for you to see that come through
Mm.
in a few years, like more people taking up university courses and stuff like that. You can try everything. You're not going to see results instantly, but as long as you're constantly trying, same things, different things, you will see the results in due course. It's not one of those things that is going to happen overnight, unfortunately.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think this all works in hand with the sort of broader IP inclusive project where it's all very well saying we can encourage a very diverse group of students, for example, to apply for jobs. But if the recruitment policies of the firms aren't diverse, then they're going to
Mm.
not actually going to get anywhere. So obviously you need firms to also sort of think, well, how are we going to make our recruitment process fair and actually get the best people in, and whether that's blinding CVs, for example, or having diverse interview panels. There's lots of sort of best practice from general law and from accountancy and other firms which have been doing this sort of industries that have been doing this a lot longer than IP, for example. But in fact, I can remember one of the first talks we went to at IP Inclusive, which was about sort of the need for diversity and inclusion. And someone who came along from industry to talk about it. She said, I haven't had to do this talk for about 10 years because the penny dropped a long time ago everywhere else. So,
Mm.
we're getting there slowly. But I think the message has sunk. And I think that, if you're a good applicant, you stand as good a chance as anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, anything to add before we sort of wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, just to second what Chris said, really, which
Mm.
is I think IP inclusive at its best, challenges firms to do better and to share best practices. Go along to an event on, recruitment processes and how we can make more diverse, and you see firms going, "Oh, they're doing that. We should probably be doing that as well."
Yeah.
And I think it also, the fact that IP inclusive exists and that firms can sign up to it and be involved in it, I think helps with the recruitment process and helps them attract diverse talent in the first place. I know when I was applying to various firms, when I very much cared about what they were doing on diversity and inclusivity. And if they had loads of IP inclusive stuff on their website and I could
Mm.
see that their staff and their employees and their partners were getting involved, that was a big tick for me. And I'd be like, okay, this looks like somewhere that cares about its people and cares about looking after and maintaining a diverse staff. So yeah, I think all of that helps.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, hopefully it will continue, as I say, long into the future for another 10 years and beyond. And again, thank you both of you for joining us today for our latest in our 10 podcasts to celebrate 10 years of IP Inclusive. So thanks to you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks to you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
And Jodie and I will see you again on another episode shortly. Thanks, Jodie.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.